Hey everybody, it's Paul with Reporting Live from my sofa. How's it going today? Things are going wonderful here at the campground and in Sofaland. The weather has been shifting. We've been getting some breezy, cool days here. Now the humidity is starting to creep back in for Labor Day, but the fall kind of came and teased us a little bit here in North Carolina. And I was just like, if I hang on just a little bit longer, it will be here. So I can't wait. I can literally smell the pumpkin spice in the air. A lot of you are commenting on our Discord channel about, your pumpkin spice lattes and your this and that and da 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 da. So it's awesome. This is my favorite time of year. I'm going to be kind of revamping some things here at the old Sofa Squad as far as like our live chat schedule and things like that go. So I am excited to get that all finalized and present it to you. So that being said, let's go ahead and start talking about what's going to be taking place in this video for today. So recently in the headlines and stuff like that, we've been seeing a lot of talk about a case that is recent-ish, last decade, whatever. It's also prevalent because of the context of the case. And as you know by now, you saw the thing or whatever, this is Michelle Carter and Conrad Roy. And this was the situation of her texting with him and convincing him essentially to end his life. So today's video, I just want to talk about this case, talk about some of the legal aspects of it. I want to talk about the prison that she's in, the sentence that she got, so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's review. Are modern relationships, ones that are conducted mostly through social media as well as text messages, are they as real as in-person traditional relationships? Do they carry the same emotional gravity? At what point does someone's suggestion become criminal? And when is the power of persuasion prison-worthy? These are the questions that I found myself going over when I was looking at this case. This brought up so many different aspects of legalities, relationships, morals, right, wrong, so on and so forth. So let's talk about the case for just a minute. So again, the two main characters in this case are Michelle Carter and Conrad Henry Roy III. Now, they actually met while they were both in Florida. Her grandparents knew Conrad's aunt, and it ended up just by coincidence that they both lived semi-close up in Massachusetts, but like an hour away from each other. And so they developed this relationship, and they actually only met like 5 times, I believe it was, over the course of this relationship, a couple of years. And so that was the first part that was kind of like surprising to people, because, a lot of people, especially some of the older generations, myself included, we grew up in a time where, we didn't have computers when I was a teenager and things like that, cell phones and whatnot. That came basically soon thereafter, but I didn't have that during that kind of social interaction time of my life. So relationships, friendships, all this stuff were done in person. So a lot of people just didn't take it that seriously. But these relationships do carry a lot of impact because they are just as real. This is the day we live in now. Text messaging, social media is just as prevalent as normal relationships. So they develop this relationship. That's what they're doing. Really, nobody knows about it. It's very secretive. After the fact, even his best friend didn't know about her. And it seems to me like Michelle kind of used the idea of him to make it sound like she had a life to a lot of people at her school she was trying to impress. But even his mother didn't understand kind of the complexity of the relationship that they were in. Now, pretty soon into this relationship, Conrad divulges to her essentially that he's not long for this earth, these thoughts that he has, so on and so forth. And for quite some time, Michelle is very much like, you can do this, you can make it, so on and so forth. You just need to get this help or that help or whatever. She was encouraging him to live life to the fullest type situation. Now, at some point during this relationship, she goes from, you can do it, to, nope, yep, this is a good idea. This is what you need to do. And, I'm going to be here for you and support you and love you. And poke and prod you on the way to this final destination that, you feel like you need to do. Now, during the testimony during court, and I'm jumping ahead real quick just to cover this definition. One of the expert doctors that got out there, Dr. Peter Brigham, he basically said that during this transition that we see with the text messaging from Michelle and whatnot in their relationship, where she goes from, no, that's a bad idea, to, yeah, you need to do this. She is in a state of she's involuntarily intoxicated. And this is from like the meds that she's on and things of that nature. Now, regardless of how she arrived there or whatever, it happens. The transition takes place, and this actually kind of deepens their bond. And this makes sense to me because, don't human beings take out the aspect of what they're kind of bonding over? Like, think about when we've been in intense moments of, stress or whatever, drama, whatever the case may be. We kind of bond to people that we're in that with, like, a survivor's bond or whatever. They seem to have this going on, so it strengthens their bond. Now, also during this time, what's really, really odd about it is, on one hand, she's like, yeah, you need to do this, you need to do this. And the next, she's like, I love you so much. You mean the world to me. So my take on it is I'm reading this, and to me, these two people both don't have a grasp on the finality of what's going on. Now, Michelle might have a grasp on it because I feel like she's in it for a different reason than he is. He seems to have this obsession with, thinking about doing this, that, the act of it, what will happen to those left behind. It's almost like it's become some kind of like a fetish for him. And so they just keep feeding each other in this cycle. And, nobody knows about this. So they're kind of living in this like very dark, secret, toxic world. Now, I'm just going to read a couple of examples of the text messages and go over there so you can kind of get an idea of these. So at times, Michelle comes across as agitated that he hasn't done this yet. And she says, you can't think about it. You just have to do it. You said you were going to do it. Like, I don't get why you aren't. Conrad, to me, treats this idea like a cliff. And he runs up to the edge of this cliff. He looks over and he's like, oh my gosh, that's scary. And he runs back. And then he's like, well, but what's down there? Can I see the bottom of it? Can I make out these trees? Well, what's this look like? And then he comes back here. Michelle's standing there with him trying to say, no, this is the viable option. And she just very methodically has this way of like always circling him back to the cliff is not a bad thing. Go ahead and jump off of it. I'm going to read a couple of more of her text messages. And one, she says, no, you're not, Conrad. Last night was it. You keep pushing it off and you say you'll do it, but you never do. It's always going to be that way if you don't take action. You're just making it harder on yourself by pushing it off. You just have to do it. So, just right there, you can read that. And especially if you read the indictment, the text messages from her are so entailed, so detailed, so encouraging him to do this. You're just like, oh my gosh. I've done some like reading of the text messages, like what we see in the news reports and things like that. And those are shocking, but when you get the full picture of because remember, they were talking about this for a long time, not just that one day. When you see how much time and energy she put into grooming him, you're just like, oh my gosh, who says this to people? Not even Conrad becomes frustrated with himself, and I'm going to read a couple of his texts real quick. He says, why am I so hesitant lately? 2 weeks ago, I was willing to try everything, and now I'm worse, really bad, and I'm not following through. It's eating me inside. And then there's Michelle to come round it back out. You're so hesitant because you keep overthinking it and pushing it off. You just need to do it, Conrad. The more you push it off, the more it will eat you. You're ready and prepared. All you have to do is turn the generator on and you'll be free and happy. No more pushing it off. No more waiting. So to someone who's sitting there trying to make a decision, pretend let's take out this context. Pretend it's any decision. I'm trying to decide what college to go to. I'm trying to decide to ride that roller coaster I've never ridden before. And you have someone just really pumping you up. And that's what she's doing. She's pumping him up for it. She's taking bits and pieces from what he's saying and pumping him up for it. So when you have somebody doing that and feeding into it, you see how this cycle goes where she's just breaking down these barriers. So July 12th, 2014, this text message exchange is going on all day long. He goes up to that cliff. He gets a little front, he comes back, she talks him back. They back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And essentially during this day, like, I think he had gone to the beach with his mom at one point. He took his sister to get ice cream. So he does these tasks that are just bizarre to me for somebody who's thinking, it's almost like a to-do list. Like, okay, well, I'm going to go run my sister here, do these errands, then I'll stop over here with the generator, do that. And I just questioned, did he understand and grasp that that's it after that? So this all comes down to, he gets this courier job. He finally does it, gets the generator, gets the truck. He goes to Kmart. It's later in the evening, so no one's there. Gets the generator turned on. He is going through with this. And again, he starts to get shaky, and he gets out of the truck, and he's on the phone with Michelle, and she tells him to get back in the truck. And so he does it, and this is where his untimely exit from here happens. Now, eventually what takes place is he's found, all this happens. The police, looking for answers, take his phone and look in it. They get access to it, they look in it, they see these text messages, first things that come up, and they're like, oh, this is, whoa, not good. So they get a search warrant, they go meet Michelle at school. She's evasive. There's recordings of it you can find on YouTube. She's very kind of like, to me, especially once you get the full gamut of the information, she knows, oh, this is what I thought was going to happen. It's happening. And so they have a search warrant for her phone. They take the phone, and then they see even more information. Now, obviously, they're going to get the cell phone records and stuff like that from the phone company, wherever they get that. I believe that one of the detectives said that they separated these pages up for a few people to go home, because this is thousands of text messages over this period of time. And they go home and read them, and they all came in and were like, oh my gosh, this is bad. And so that's when they go to the DA. Basically, they charge her with involuntary manslaughter, and some of the key words that are used are wanton and reckless behavior, essentially contributing to the demise of another. Now, also during this period, red flags are going up for his family members. Michelle has interjected herself into the situation, almost where you see people who commit these acts, whatever they might be, and then they come back to the scene to watch it, or they want to try and help the detectives find whoever did it. It's almost like she was doing that, probably for different reasons. I think attention-based and belonging-based. But, she's like texting the sister, oh, you'll find him, and, or have you seen him? And going back and forth with the mom a little bit before all the evidence came out, before she was arrested and things like this. Now, also some other really odd things were, she asked the family if she could have some of his ashes. And she also asked if she could go through his room and take some of the belongings. And then in one of the correspondences with the mother, I believe it was, she was essentially like, I tried to save him, I tried to do this, and all these things were just raising red flags, like, what's going on with this girl? This is odd. And also, she organized a charity baseball event for him. Now, she held this event in her own hometown instead of in the hometown that he was from. So essentially, nobody where she held this at knew him. These were all her friends. We'll get to those in a minute. And even his best friend had told her, why don't we have it here? All his friends and family are here. And she was kind of upset by this. He even considered doing the same thing there, and she was concerned about him taking her idea. This was a social thing. So let's talk about some of these friends at her school, some of what maybe her motivations were. So now the evidence shows that she kind of hung out with this group of friends at school, and I can remember people at school like this, and there's friends you have at school that are your friends, and that you do spend the nights, things like that. And then there's friends that kind of hang out with your group, but they're not part of the group, like hanger-ons. And a lot of times it comes down to people are just kind of nice to them or whatever. My interpretation is that Michelle was a hanger-on. She had this group of girls that she was trying to impress, so on and so forth, and probably not just them, but probably other people. But these girls ended up testifying. And what the girls testified to is essentially that, yeah, we were friends with her at school. She'd asked us to do stuff, but we really never would. And Michelle was dramatic. She was kind of a person that's like in need, if that makes sense. And so they were there for her for that, but it wasn't something that they really wanted in their personal lives. So one thing that takes place, the evidence, is they see that days before Conrad went through with this, Michelle was texting these girls things like, Conrad's missing and things of this nature, as if she was putting out feelers to see how the reaction was. And this garnered attention from these young ladies. And so therein lies the issue of, oh, well, this is working. I'm getting attention. Let's keep going. And you start to see this narrative forming of, I want to be the victim of this horrible situation. Look at the attention that I'll get because my boyfriend did this. And you see that taking place. Essentially, during the case, these young ladies got out there, they testified, and Michelle's in there, and I personally was just like, my gosh. I mean, here's Michelle sitting over here. She's done this, heinous thing, and these girls are basically like, yeah, we were just kind of nice to her. I was just like, that has to be really sobering for Michelle, to get this dose of reality. One thing that took place when the act happened is, Michelle texted the girls all this, and they're, oh, I'll be right over there. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this. I'll come right over. So that right there had to be literally intoxicating for her. Oh my gosh, this happened. I'm getting what I want. These people all came to the baseball game. She took a picture with a team of people. I mean, she looked like completely happy. So she was in her element. And she, even in some of the text messages they found, like one of the girls she texted, and she said, oh my gosh, if his parents knew, they would, if they knew about some of the messages or whatever, what took place, that they would despise me, the police would come for me. And she's telling this young lady, I told him to get back in the truck. And to me, I personally think that at a certain point, people probably thought this girl is drama. She is high maintenance. People who are like that. It's like the boy who cried wolf. Eventually what happens is you start to water down things that they say, because you're like, well, I mean, what is it now? What mountain are we making out of an anthill? So that's the vibe that I got. These girls were just like, oh my God, we're being nice. This is a horrible thing that happened to her. They didn't know at first the details. So we'll come over and console you and be with you. But then I'm sure Michelle took advantage of that. Obviously she did. The evidence shows that. And so there's just this level where I'm sure some of the stuff they brushed off. So now this case is going on. The trial is going on. Now this was in juvenile court. And again, this is a huge thing because essentially she wasn't there. It's just her words. And it's a matter of, well, at what point do words become accountable to something like this? So let's kind of just fast forward. The trial's taking place. This is going on. Let's get to what came out of it. The judge was Judge Lawrence Moniz. Hopefully I'm saying that right. The day before the trial started, Michelle's attorney asked for a bench trial, which essentially means they waive the right to a jury trial. They're just presenting to the judge. Okay, I think regardless of feelings towards her, that was a smart move on their part, because I think that a jury trial would have immediately just been like torn them to pieces, because they're kind of thinking the way most of the public is. Now, also, the judge is going to have a better idea, a clearer point of what the law is and things of this nature, so he's going to look at it through that lens. So they present the case to the judge. And at the end of the day, when the verdict came and all that stuff, he comes out and he had prepared an explanation, which I love it when judges do this, and I think they especially do this in juvenile court and things like this. So he prepared the statement, and honestly, it sounded like he was going to let her off. And I think she started crying like of relief, and then he gets to the however, and her tone changes in the whole 9 yards. But essentially, he broke it down in like self-causation, the chain of self-causation. And essentially what he's saying is, leading up to the truck incident, like, so all these text messages and all that, that's basically on Conrad. Like, that's his own deal. You're not accountable for that. At the end of the day, it's hard to convict someone for being a horrible person. And so I can see his point in that, because we'll get to that in a minute. But he says, and I completely agree with this too, he says that when it came down to the truck, and he got out of the truck and she told him to get back in, that's where you're criminally negligent. I mean, that's like, to me, handing a gun to a baby and letting them play with it. And then saying, but you're allowed to do that. It's just like, why would you even do that? Clearly, this kid, Conrad, had some issues going on. I mean, not that she didn't, but he had issues going on. She knew what she was doing. She told him to get back in the truck. And at minimum, She could have called the police. She could have done this or that. So there's lots of stuff to do at that point that she did not do. And so 100% absolutely criminally negligent. So I completely agree with that. She belongs in prison. And again, if you read the indictment and read the previous text messages, even like things that the judge is saying, whether it's not her fault, you see how much time and energy she spent. I call it grooming, manipulating, whatever you want to say, persuading. I mean, it's shocking. She definitely, she deserves to be in prison. So the sentence that he gave her, and I'm just going to look at my notes real quick so I can say it right, is he gave her 2.5-year term, 15 months to be served in the Bristol County House of Corrections, and the rest of the balance was suspended, and then 5 years probation. Now, another thing that the judge did is he let her stay out on bail until her state appeals were exhausted. I mean, if you want me to be honest, I thought the sentence that she got, I was like, honey, you need to be real happy with that. Like, I mean, really happy with that. That was a sweet sentence. And again, with all the mixtures of the stuff, because, you know, she was a juvenile, technically a juvenile when this happened. The state of the case was just unprecedented at this point. It was like we hadn't really seen anything like this. So, you know, do I think it was... The family was happy with it. Let's say that. So, there you go. So now, her state appeals, they held the conviction. They upheld the convictions. And on February 11th, when she went back to court, she was basically had to start serving her sentence immediately. So she was taken back. Now, remember, this is 15-month sentence. You don't have to serve that entire time. So she'll actually be up for parole, I think at the end of September 2019, after serving like 7.5 months. Now, does that mean she'll get parole? I mean, we don't know. So if it was California, absolutely, with overcrowding and stuff, I don't know how it is in Massachusetts. So Michelle started out at the Bristol House of Correction in North Dartmouth. This place is also famous. This is where Aaron Hernandez was. Now, the sheriff there, Thomas Hodgson, he said that she was really a model inmate there. He said she was quiet, she was involved in programs, and, you know, that's what she did. And her day is very regimented. She's not going out kayaking and going on school field trips. It's like, you know, breakfast in the morning, programs, lunch, breakfast, dinner, some free time, programs, lights out. And so that's what she was doing. But in July 2019, she was transferred somewhere. Now, the spokespeople for the sheriff and the jail and her attorney are all like, totally quiet about this. And they're basically like, she's still in custody, but not in Bristol County. So this is what I think. I think either her life was threatened, she did something, and, like, you know, she messed up. Like, I don't know. I mean, you know, at one point she's doing, like, really well. I'm a model inmate. But she could have gotten comfortable and done something shady. We don't know. Or her parents moved, and, like, she wanted to move to be closer to them. I think it's like a security thing. That's my guess. I could not find anything else on that. So if y'all know what took place, drop it like it's hot down in the comments and let me know. Because I'd be curious to know. Because, again, I can't find anything on it. So that's where she's at. And, again, she's going to be eligible for parole at the end of September. So now I want to go over real quick 2 bits of, like, resources for this, and also things that I think that if you haven't seen them, you have to go watch and read this. First is the documentary I Love You Now Die by Aaron Lee Carr. Amazing. It looks into the prosecution and the defense of this case, and to me, it just presents each side as very interesting. I do think there's a level where the documentary wants you to... It kind of wants you to come across in a certain way to examine Michelle in a different light. And for me personally, I can't get past the text messages. I can't get past the evidence, you know. Also, and I understand this part... we've not really ever heard anything from her. We might not ever, you know. I mean, what do you say to that? You know what I'm saying? So, and that's how these cases go. I mean, most of the time, if the people are smart, they're not going to talk. So, I mean, I get that. I'm not faulting her for that part. That's per her attorney, I'm sure. But because of that, you're just kind of left to speculation. And so I can't get past that to view her in a very sympathetic light. Jesse Barron wrote an article for the Esquire called The Girl from Plainville. It is amazing. He goes into... You have to read this. And he's also in the documentary, I Love You Now Die. And he goes into the aspect about the Glee connection, where she was, like, kind of obsessed with the show. And she was, like, texting Conrad, like, exact lines from that show, as well as The Fault in Our Stars. Now, on the show Glee, the main character, I mean, a lot of us already know this, he passed due to an overdose. And, pardon me, and his onstage, offstage girlfriend, they had like a tribute on the show, this, that, and the other. So that's where the lines were coming from that Michelle was saying to Conrad. So you kind of see this like play that she created in her world that she was living out. It was very bizarre and it was sad. So, at the end of the day, I personally think that hopefully law will come into play for things like this to take place, because social media, texting, all this type of stuff, it's very real. We see this all the time. People get harassed, they get bullied, they form these relationships like this, and then we're going to have to start holding people accountable on some level, because I think that social media is here to stay. So we need to start having laws that can act in the way to hold people accountable for some of the stuff that's done not in real life. Now, I'm going to put links down in the description or the pinned comment, or both, we don't know, to the article in the movie I was telling you about. So I also have a couple of podcasts on this if you want to listen to it. It's on Apple, Stitcher, Anchor. And also there's going to be my website down there, reporting live from mysofa.com. Now, on the website, you can get to all this stuff. So that's probably, it's like your one-stop shop there. You can find the podcast and more YouTube videos and my blog and all that kind of stuff. So that is it. I appreciate you hanging out here with the Sofa Squad this week. Again, we are going to be revamping for the fall season. So that will be coming here in a couple of weeks. I will make the announcement. I hope all of you are doing wonderful and amazing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being supportive. Thank you for your good energy. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye!